The Audi S3 has long been something more than just another hot hatch. Whether it's the all-wheel drive chassis or the power output that lifts it beyond the GTI brigade, the S3 is a car with vast capability, but one that rarely feels inclined to advertise the fact. In its latest guise, you get 300 PS and the potential of sub 5 second 0 to 62 mph acceleration, rather astonishingly combined with a combined cycle fuel average of over 40 miles to the gallon. Together with sharper looks, greater practicality and extra high-tech equipment, all of this might well be enough to create the most complete sports hatch you can buy. There's something very right about the Audi S3. Always has been, always will be. Let me explain. Once upon a time, a hot hatch didn't have to be a mature, sensible thing. No, that wasn't the point of buying one. You got a shopping rocket because it was fun, with just enough practicality to enable you to justify the purchase to your other half. With the S3 though, it was different. Here was an aspirational premium GTI with a price tag to match. A hot hatch for people who ordinarily would have grown out of hot hatches. We first saw it way back in 1999 at a launch overshadowed by an Audi TT sports car that shared the S3's Quattro four-wheel drive system and got a slightly pokier version of its 2-litre turbocharged unit. That's a basic mechanical configuration the German brand has stuck to ever since, but of course power has spiralled since then. The early 210 PS output figure was quickly upgraded to 225 PS in the first generation version, then boosted again to 265 PS for the Mark II model introduced in 2006. So the 2-litre turbo engine was redeveloped from the ground up to make its new numbers and plumbed into the lighter, stiffer MQB platform that had done so much to improve the agility and efficiency of more mundane third generation A3 models. The result is the car you see here, the most capable version yet. Let's try it. Now, let's start with a bit of perspective. It wasn't very long ago that at the turn of the century, Porsche was launching an all-new water-cooled flat-six engine in its 911 sports car with the proud boast that the unit put out as much as 300 PS. A figure now routinely matched by the most powerful versions of family hatchbacks like this one. In fact, you might even want to take the comparison a little further and note that this Audi's latest EA888 generation 2-litre turbo power plant develops virtually as much pulling power as the current 7th generation 911 Carrera can offer, a model seen by many, including me, as qualifying for junior supercar status. So you get the idea. This Mark III S3 model packs quite a punch. Just how much is obvious right from the get-go, especially if you've specified the S-Tronic twin-clutch paddle-shift auto gearbox that I'm trying here with its built-in launch control function. Let's try it. It'll hurl you towards the 62 mph horizon from rest in just 4.8 seconds. That's nearly a half a second quicker than the manual model, pinning you into the deep bucket seat that gently squeezes you into position behind the wheel. Nor has this engine been merely tuned for that largely irrelevant sprint, or for the equally irrelevant 155 mph restricted maximum. On the contrary, the healthy 380 Newton meters of torque on offer is yours to exercise across a wide, everyday usable range that starts from just 1800 RPM and lasts all the way through to 5,500 RPM, by which time you know you're really motoring. That's because, unlike previous Audi small capacity turbos, this one makes an interesting noise when you put some demand on it. Okay, so the sound you get is to some extent artificially generated via an electromechanical sound actuator in the front bulkhead and a sound flap in the exhaust that opens when you stick your foot down. But who cares? It's still rich, bassy and nearly as nice as the purer note that you'd find in the straight six of a rival BMW M135i. It's certainly preferable to the domineering turbo whoosh of an Astra VXR or a Renault Sport Megane. Now, things like that matter to me because, unlike the folk in Audi's marketing department, I don't live in a world of open, sweeping highland roads and deserted Tuscan mountain back doubles. My world has speed humps and traffic jams, school runs and shopping trips, as well as the occasional favoured back road and fast grippy right-hander. And even then, like as not, it's chucking it down or early in the morning with a patch of black ice to catch out the unwary. Which is why, in a car as powerful as this one, I'd ideally want four-wheel drive as a non-negotiable. It's designed for the kind of driving life this country forces me to have, and its provision is one of the things that, for me, makes this S3 very tempting indeed. Leaving aside Volkswagen's mechanically identical Golf R, there's nothing else comparable on offer at this car's direct price point that offers such a setup. We're talking Quattro four-wheel drive here, of course, which inevitably Audi reckons is the definitive kind, worked via an electronically controlled and hydraulically actuated multi-plate clutch that normally sends most of the engine's power to the front wheels. Any loss of traction, though, will be followed milliseconds later with the transfer of exactly the right amount of torque to the rear axle. With that, and ideally a set of winter tyres as well, you'll end up with a car that really does make typical British winter weather an excuse to go out and play, and one that will only be limited by ground clearance when it comes to the worst conditions we experience. Even if the mercury isn't hovering somewhere below zero, you'll feel the benefits of that all-wheel drive system time and again. Just a little light drizzle can reduce the available grip to your front tyres by 50%. So having the rears take up the strain can make the difference between accelerating cleanly and safely onto a roundabout and having the traction control light blinking impotently as you crawl into the path of an oncoming aggregates truck. This lack of fuss characterises this Audi. There's a serenity to the way it moves, a kind of loose-limbed athleticism, which brings me to the next point I want to make. Yes, this car goes well, grips tenaciously, and sounds nice while it's doing it, but there's more to this Mark III Model S3 than that, and a lot of it's down to the clever high-tech MQB chassis that's such a handling feature of all third-generation A3 variants. This, along with copious use of aluminium in the multi-link suspension, is the reason why this car has shed over 60 kilograms in comparison with its predecessor. Now, a lighter car is not only a more chuckable and economic one, but it also ought to ride better, as this one can, since there's less work for the springs and dampers to do. I say this one can if you specify it properly. To be frank, the standard setup, the one I have here, is rather firm, developed perhaps on billiard table smooth German tarmac. So it's worth considering the option your Audi salesperson would doubtless offer of magnetic ride damper control, enabling you to set the suspension to the mood you're in and the road you're on. Go for that, then choose the comfort option, and you'll find that this car really does handle poor surfaces very well, which is what you need when it's chucking it down, the road surface is awful, and you just want to turn up the stereo and get home. This magnetic ride system works via the same dynamic, efficiency or comfort buttons that you get on the standard Drive Select setup that tweaks steering feel, throttle response, and on the S-Tronic Auto model, shift times for the twin clutch gearbox. There's an auto setting if you can't be bothered to choose, and an individual option if you want to create your own specific preset parameters. Spend a morning playing about with the thing and you can fine-tune your own preferences pretty accurately. Just don't let your friends touch it. That's a get out and walk offence. Of course, the primary reason for doing that is so that with one push of the dynamic button, all your favourite red mist settings are instantly activated when the road opens up, and you've a chance to let this Audi off its leash and start to throw it about a bit, which is something that, to be frank, you'd be a bit more inclined to do if the steering was a bit more responsive. Yes, it waits slightly in dynamic mode, but rather artificially so. Still, that is at least preferable to the vague feel that characterises the other settings. It's true that there are some good things about it, like the so-called progressive feature we first saw on the Golf GTI, which basically means that the more lock you put on the variable ratio rack, the less you have to turn. But that apart, the feeling you get through the helm is one of the things engendering that feeling of aloofness that's always detracted a little from the overall S3 experience. Porsche has demonstrated how to do these electrically assisted steering systems the right way, and now that it's under the same Volkswagen Group umbrella as Audi, it's probably high time that Ingolstadt sent some of its engineers to Weissach to learn some of the finer points. So, is that one caveat ultimately enough to detract from the fun factor that really ought to be a non-negotiable part of any super shopping rocket's appeal? In the final analysis, I'd say not. An S3 accelerates beautifully, grips astonishingly, brakes reassuringly, and darts into corners with all the immediacy of a shark turning towards a meal. There's very little not to like. No, you probably wouldn't want to take one on a track day. Choose something like Megane Renault Sport if that's what you want. But then that's never been the point of this car. It offers ultimate performance for the real world, pure and simple. And it's devastatingly effective at doing it. A word we keep coming back to when discussing this S3 is subtle. Now, some might feel this car is too pared back and that for the kind of money being asked, you should be rewarded with a bit more drama. That's one view. Another might well be that if you've got to the point in life when you can afford to spend a substantial amount on a very fast performance hatch, you might well be done with worrying who notices you and what they think of your purchasing decisions. And it's with this kind of customer in mind that the S3 wears its ornamentation lightly. At the front end here, it gets xenon headlamps with LED daytime running lights. Then you've got this S-specific single-frame grille with its matte platinum grey inserts and an aluminium look finish, also used across its distinctive horizontal double bars. The bumper gets these neat aluminium look double ribs integrated into the air inlets, and there are also these pronounced edges that frame air intakes finished with high gloss black honeycomb inserts. That leaves only these air openings down here by the wheels, one of the few bits of extraneous styling on the S3. They don't actually do anything. Moving round to the side, you get the aluminium look exterior mirrors that characterise all Audi S models, plus these sculpted side sills. The car comes with 18-inch twin-spoke star design alloy wheels as standard, but there are 3 other options, all of the same diameter. Peeking out between the spokes, you'll spy black painted calipers branded with S3 logos, which can be coloured red if preferred. At the back, S3 experts will spot the reprofiled rear bumper and a platinum grey diffuser bookended by 4 chromed oval exhaust tailpipes. Aside from that, assuming that you haven't specified one of the exclusive Crystal Effect S3 paint finishes, that's Panther Black and Estoril Blue, the only things that visually differentiate this top variant from any normal S-Line trimmed A3 model are this more purposeful roof spoiler and a modest sprinkling of small S badges. Of course, the more important design elements lie beneath all this tinsel. Like all third-generation A3 derivatives, this one rides on the Volkswagen Group's clever MQB chassis. That's a clever piece of kit composed of a hybrid of steel and aluminium panels, and the part of the car that contributes most to the 60-kilogram weight saving this S3 enjoys over its predecessor. It's also enabled a 23mm wheelbase increase, which in turn provides for a more spacious cabin you'll probably appreciate most when confined to the rear. Head, leg And thanks to a 12mm width increase, elbow and shoulder room are all better than was possible before, which you'll doubtless appreciate more frequently if you go for the 5-door Sportback body shape rather than the 3-door version that I have here. And out back, well, the boot now houses 365 litres of luggage. That's 15 litres better than the old model, a figure that rises to 1,100 litres if you fold down the split folding rear bench. On the Sportback version, the respective figures are 380 and 1,220 litres, while on the Saloon they're 390 and 845 litres. In the Cabriolet version, the figures fall to 320 and 678 litres. Now let's get behind the wheel and let Audi weave the little spell it likes to lay on you before you've even turned the key of this S3. It's all in the details. Through a lovely, grippy, flat-bottomed, chunky S3 embossed leather-trimmed sports steering wheel, you view grey-faced, white-needled instruments, which now feature a fancy boost pressure indicator on the rev counter, which lights up in segments as the turbo pressure increases. There's black headlining with contrast stitching, an aluminium look pedal set, deep bucket seats that gently squeeze you into position and feature pull-out cushions, and more S logos on the door sills, the steering wheel and the gear knob to set off the exquisite dashes of chrome and soft touch tactility. Nobody does this better than Ingolstadt. There's more S3 branding on the splash screen of the MMI infotainment monitor, which glides out of the top of the dashboard when you fire up the ignition, and still stands as one of the very clearest and most intuitive systems of its kind. Audio, navigational and informational functions are accessed by a simple rotary controller, which can now come integrated with a touchpad so that instructions can be traced in by fingertip. Otherwise, the feel of this cabin will be familiar fare to anybody who understands Audi design language, with its minimalist look, its lack of button clutter, and the 4 characteristic chrome-trimmed circular air vents that punctuate the dash. You'll pay just over £30,000 for a standard 3-door manual gearbox S3 without any extras, but let's face it, very few are going to be leaving dealers in that form. Now, we've so far merely been concerned with this 3-door model, but it's actually just one member of a surprisingly wide S3 family that also runs to a 5-door Sportback, a 4-door Saloon, and even a 2-door Cabriolet. You'll pay a reasonable premium of just over £600 to move from this car to the longer wheelbase 5-door S3 Sportback. But if you want to move from this 3-door into a 4-door Saloon version, there is, for reasons best known to Audi, a much greater premium of well over £2,500 to pay. Expect to need a budget approaching around £40,000 for the Cabriolet model once you've factored in the cost of a few well-chosen extras. As for rivals, well, there are 2 obvious ones if you've outgrown and want something nicer and faster than mainstream hot hatches like Volkswagen's Golf GTI, Ford's Focus ST and the Renault Sport Megane. So, beyond these, what are the alternative ultimate shopping rockets that might suit? Well, first, there's the car that, under the skin, is pretty much identical to this one, Volkswagen's Golf R. Same engine, same 4-wheel drive system, much the same spec. Crucially, though, it's only around £750 less than an S3, and given that it's priced that closely, most would take this Audi every time for its inevitably likely superior residual values. Now, the other obvious rival, in price terms anyway, is BMW's M135i. It costs around the same as an S3, and for an old-school driving enthusiast, will probably be slightly more involving with its rear-wheel drive heroics and silky smooth 3-litre 6-cylinder engine. But the list of drawbacks is long. The lack of 4-wheel drive, the higher running costs, the 3-door only body style choice, and so on. The other possible alternative is the Mercedes A45 AMG, but although with 360 PS on tap that offers quite a bit more power, it's also vastly more expensive at around £38,000. All of which means that if you've been through the options, you could well end up deciding that you do indeed want an S3. But of course, making that decision is just a start. You're going to need to specify it to your tastes. Now, before we get to that, let's just recap what you get as standard. Because it's actually quite a lot, but such is the quiet, understated appearance of this Audi, you just have to look a bit harder for everything. Aside from the S3 specific stuff like the body kit, the lovely 18-inch alloy wheels, sports seats and so on, the car comes with Xenon Plus headlights, heated door mirrors, a 5.8-inch extending slimline colour infotainment display, Bluetooth for your phone, a driver information system with onboard computer, dual zone climate control, a leather trimmed multifunction steering wheel, and the Audi Drive Select system that tweaks throttle, steering, and on the S-tronic version, gear shift times to suit your mood and driving style. Most customers tend to tick the box for the S-tronic 7-speed sequential transmission that I've been trying here, and this will add on another £1,500 to your final figure. You'll also probably want to look at finding, well, the best part of another £1,000 for the magnetic ride damper control system that works through the Drive Select settings and provides an antidote for those who don't always want the standard model's rather firm ride. Other popular options? Well, sat-nav, of course, for another £500 or so. And then there's the question of seating. The standard front chairs feature seat centres in cloth with pearl nappa leather bolsters, but I'd prefer the option of perforated Alcantara and pearl nappa leather. That's if I wasn't going to push the boat out and go for a mix of velvet leather with fine nappa leather. But anyway, none of these alternatives can quite match the impact of the optional S sports seats with their wing-backed integrated head restraints and diamond quilting. Go on, spoil yourself. Should you want to tailor your S3 further, you might like to consider specifying the high-tech full LED headlamps designed to better reproduce natural light and illuminate your way further ahead, turning with the corners. Once you've got them, you'll wonder how you managed without. Then there's the advanced key option, which gives you keyless push-button starting. The Audi phone box option that connects your mobile phone to the vehicle's aerial. A panoramic glass roof, an interior lighting package that makes you feel very special indeed when it gets dark. A high-end 14-speaker, 705-watt, 15-channel Bang & Olufsen sound system, and a park assist setup that can identify the tightest space, then automatically steer you into it. And all of that is before you get to the particularly clever electronic connectivity options that really do set this car apart. The Audi Connect system lets the driver network with the internet and with other vehicles, and its central component is what Audi calls mobile phone preparation. Now with this, you can turn your S3 into a WLAN, that's for Wireless Local Area Network, hotspot, so that you can surf the internet and email with up to 8 mobile devices. This also brings into play features such as navigation with images from Google Earth, a Google Points of Interest search function with voice control, and a web radio setup so that you can tune in to stations around the world. There's also the option of text-to-speak messaging, access to Facebook, Twitter and online news, and a clever Audi online traffic information system that uses live traffic information to reroute you around jams. Truly, this is motoring in the 21st century. Safety-wise, a 5-star Euro NCAP showing is justified by the usual twin front, side and head airbags, plus the knee bag that you get for the driver. You also get Isofix child seat fastenings, an active bonnet designed to reduce pedestrian injuries, plus ESP stability control and adaptive brake lights that flash during emergency stops to warn following motorists. There's also driver rest recommendation technology that assesses your driving style and shows a warning if it detects a decline in attentiveness, prompting you to stop for a restorative coffee. There's also a clever secondary collision brake assist system that automatically brakes the car down to 6 miles an hour after a collision. So if, say, someone hits you and you understandably go to pieces, the car will automatically sort itself out. Beyond that, there is of course plenty of optional safety technology. I particularly like the ACC Adaptive Cruise Control System, which works at up to 124 miles an hour and is capable of bringing the car to a complete stop, then automatically pulling it away again if necessary. You can also build into this setup the even smarter Pre-Sense Front system. Now this uses a radar sensor to constantly scan the road ahead for potential collision risks, warning the driver if one is detected and, if necessary, even automatically braking the car to respond if you're travelling below 19 miles an hour. The Pre-Sense technology is also available in a more basic guise, which will automatically tension the front seat belts and close both the windows and, if fitted, the power sunroof if the ESP system indicates that the car is about to skid. Other neat optional touches include a traffic sign detection setup that pictures speed signs as you pass and displays them on the dash. Then there's Audi Side Assist, which stops you pulling out to dangerously overtake when there's a vehicle in your blind spot. And Active Lane Assist. Audi Active Lane Assist is there to stop dozy drivers from veering out of their lanes on the highway. Lightweight has all kinds of automotive advantages, and with enhancements like the use of aluminium for the front wings and bonnet, meaning savings of up to 60 kilograms on the previous generation model, this Mark III S3 model is certainly as lean as it can be, with a curb weight of under 1,400 kilograms in manual form. Now, I'll put that figure into perspective by telling you that a rival BMW M135i is well over 100 kilograms heavier, the weight of a couple of extra passengers, despite not having to cart around a four-wheel drive system. If you want a four-wheel drive example, I'll tell you that a rival Mercedes A45 AMG is 160 kilograms heavier. Now you see the benefits that a properly engineered platform like Audi's MQB chassis can provide. Or perhaps you'd rather look at the stats. While a BMW M135i manages 35.3 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 188 grams per kilometre of CO2, this S3 delivers 40.4 miles to the gallon and 162 grams per kilometre in manual form. An S-Tronic Auto, like the one I have here, improves those figures to 40.9 miles to the gallon and 159 grams per kilometre. Of course, it's not all down to the lightweight underpinnings. There's also a stop-start system which cuts the engine when you don't need it, stuck in traffic or waiting at the lights. And a host of other detailed touches like brake energy regeneration, which recycles energy that would otherwise be lost when braking or when cruising. Then there's the climate control system that can be used in a highly economic eco mode. And don't forget the efficiency setting on the Drive Select vehicle dynamics system, low rolling resistance tyres, power saving electrically assisted steering, and a gear shift indicator on manual models. If you go for an S-Tronic twin clutch automatic variant like the one I have here, then there's a fuel saving coasting function that kicks in when you're cruising at high speed on the motorway and you take your foot off the throttle. What else? The warranty for the S3 is a fairly unspectacular 3-year, 60,000 mile deal, and if you're much under 30 years of age, you might want to get a few insurance quotes before you commit to buy. And depreciation? Well, it's fairly common knowledge in the industry that the S3 has some of the best residual value figures of any performance car. No, it can't quite match the Porsche Cayman, which retains 54% of its value after 3 years and 36,000 miles, but the S3's 47% is still miles better than something like a Ford Focus ST, and matches the Golf GTI with the 230 PS performance pack. Now, that last point is key. you might have quite fancied the Golf, but instead of paying just over £28,000 for one, paying another £2,000 for a car with all-wheel drive and another 70 PS under the bonnet seems like quite a smart move. Wouldn't life be dull if we always just bought what we needed rather than what we wanted? There we'd be living this Tesco value range existence, clad head to toe in Primark, and driving would be functional, grey and joyless. Fortunately, indulgence is a part of human nature, a facet shamelessly capitalised upon by cars like this one, the automotive equivalent perhaps of one of those hugely expensive Breitling watches that are waterproof to 100 fathoms and which can apparently withstand a shot from a sniper's bullet. Will you ever need that kind of functionality? Of course not, but it makes you smile to know it's there and reserved just in case you ever fall in the bath or get called to give a speech from an open car in Dallas, Texas. In the same way, no one actually needs an S3, but then no one actually needs a hot hatch either. So if you can afford to get yourself a shopping rocket, why not buy one that makes you feel the way that this car does? It's certainly the sort of sports hatch that might well appeal if you owned all the loudest and fastest GTIs in the 90s and noughties, and now just want something that can do it all without drawing attention to itself. True, critics might point out that this Audi could be more engaging, that it could grab you a little more by the scruff of the neck. But pointing that out probably says more about the Tester than the S3. To be frank, it never has been that sort of ride. Where the car scores is in its massive capability and its beautifully engineered feel-good factor. The joy of ownership here doesn't necessarily come from clipping apexes at the limit of grip, although the S3 will indulge you in that way if you want. Instead, it comes from owning something jewel-like and exclusive, a very, very quick car that doesn't overly immerse you in the business of going, well, very, very quickly. The thinking person's super hatch? You're looking at it right here.